On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, I talk with an abuse survivor named Darrin, and Darrin discusses his codependent behaviors, being worthy, and taking responsibility for his own issues in the aftermath of his relationship. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of narcissistic abuse. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning into this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It is that simple. And now, before we get to our episode with Darrin, I just wanted to thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. A big shout out to all of our friends in our Narcissist Apocalypse Facebook support group for being just a great group of people. So hello to all of you out there. Also, a reminder, if you haven't left. Oh, God. I'm flipping over my words already. If you haven't left us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, CastBox, etc., leave us a 5-star written review as it helps out the show a lot when it comes to rankings. Now, the quickest way to be part of our show is if you want to read a letter to your narcissist and be part of our Letters to Our Narcissist compilation episode. We have a voicemail recorder on our website to record. Go to narcissistapocalypse.com. It's on the right side of the page. It's always floating around. It's hard to miss. There's a button there, and it says Send Voicemail. Press it, and away you'll go. You can record once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. It records up to 5 minutes, so record as many times as you need. We are accumulating these letters for a volume 3 of that episode. And if you want us to read your letter for you, that's me and my old pal Melissa, send your letter to narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com and put Letters to My Narcissist in the subject line. And before I get out of my own way, I just wanted to pre-discuss this episode and why I think it's pretty interesting. Before Darrin came into this relationship, he had a lot of stuff going on in his life, and he had codependent issues. And the funny thing about this episode is we actually never bring up the word codependency. We kind of skirt around it in a sense, but we're discussing a lot of codependent behavior that is going on. And it's really interesting, a lot of episodes, there's different focal points. Sometimes we focus on tactics. Sometimes, it's a lot of the time we're focusing on the behavior of the actual narcissist themselves. And I found a lot here. We were dealing with introspection on Darrin's part as far when it comes to his own issues coming into it, and then the aftermath and how he dealt with things and how he used this bad relationship as a springboard to creating a better version of himself, and really deep diving into all of the issues that he brought to the table, which added to, or, he was easily taken advantage of because of the codependency that was going on. So I really found this episode interesting, and, if you listen to the end, you'll be able to hear a lot of the things that he was working on throughout the process and how he did it. So thank you, Darrin, for being on the show. And for everyone, I'm now officially going to get out of your way, my way, Darrin's way. Here is my episode with Darrin. Welcome to this episode. And with me today, I have Darrin. How are you, Darrin?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being on this episode and sharing your story with me and our audience. And I'm just going to get out of your way for you to tell your story.
All right. Well, the pressure's on now, right? Huh? I kind of have been all over the place. I moved a lot when I was younger. Kind of typical, I was born in Boston. Then I moved south when my parents got divorced, and I kind of stayed south. And kind of my parents, my family life is very fractured. I'm the youngest of three. I have an older brother and older sister, and basically, my mom I was really, really close to my mom, and she was like my hero in a lot of ways. And I was going to school, and then I was really quiet in school. I didn't have any friends. To be honest, the first time I ever asked a girl out, she laughed at me. It was just kind of a very traumatic experience. So I always was not the greatest with women. I was pretty overweight when I was in high school. When I graduated, I got to over 300 pounds. Then I lost a little bit of it, and then kind of on a whim, I joined a band, and I did that for a while. And then, I kind of had this, while I was doing that, my mom died of cancer. And then right before she died, my grandma died as well. So it was a lot of loss. And, during that whole time, I kind of was, it was very, I never really dated. I had a girlfriend, my first girlfriend I had when I was 21, was first ever real girlfriend, and that was just a cluster. And after that, I kind of just said, I'm not going to date. And my band was really the love of my life. And when that fell apart in my late 20s, I kind of had this just very much of a reckoning. I kind of got lost in drinking, and I got to a point where I moved across the country again to try to kind of think if I changed the location, it would somehow make me happier. And I realized that it wasn't, so I moved back south, and I started going to therapy after that, and I really was able to highlight a lot of my abandonment issues. I realized that even to this day, I still have pretty strong abandonment issues. And it was something where I couldn't, I was pretty just really down. I was really depressed, and I was trying dating, but it wasn't really clicking. And then probably the most important person that I've ever dated came into my life about 5 years ago now.
Can I ask you one question before you start into this
sure.
part? So in your before you met what is to be your ex, mm-hmm. you went to therapy. Were you dealing with I guess some of your biggest issues? The need to be loved and attention, was that a big thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think I was drawn to, especially performing, when I was a musician. It was definitely, attention was man, it was addicting. But also, there's one thing I realized through this whole process too, and I don't think I was really ready to hear it before this relationship, but I've always just struggled with feeling worthy and being good enough. When, to go back to, I kind of remember my dynamic with my mom. My mom had a lot of stuff going on and was dealing with a lot of turmoil, especially with my older siblings. And what I learned was to kind of just kind of put my feelings on the back burner and say, kind of almost like fall on the sword, so to speak, and be like, I'm not going to bother you with my feelings. I'm going to just, take one for the team, and I'm just going to put on a good face, and I'm not going to burden you with my issues. And I kind of learned, and I think in a weird way, I mean, I don't think she did this purposely, but I think she was just appreciative because she just knew. She always told me, oh, you're just so easy. I said my name.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry. Just continue.
Okay, sorry. But she would say, don't worry, oh, don't worry. you're so easy to talk to, and, you're the easiest one and all that stuff. So it always made me feel like, well, that's how I get acceptance, is that I just don't bring up my feelings. I literally just ate my feelings. And so I kind of realized that I definitely struggle with feeling love and affection. It's a very foreign concept. And it definitely was a struggle, and unfortunately it made me probably the most perfect bait for what happened.
It sounds like this was destined to happen. Like, based upon your personality, like, you just had to run into the wrong one, which was probably going to be inevitable at some point, and you did.
I just pushed, and I pushed it because I was so, like, I talked to my first girlfriend years later, and she just said, you always had, like, love repellent on. And it always kind of stuck with me, and I didn't really realize it till I went through this, how, like, I just would not allow, like, I would not allow anybody to get too close. And I always just kind of kept people at a distance and I didn't really know why, but I just always felt kind of like, almost like when people would be interested in me, I just was really confused. I was like, why? There's something wrong with you if you like me. That's just weird. And so I always chased after people that didn't want anything to do with me. Or if they did, I just, it was up to a certain point, and then I never understood this process, like why I felt this way, and then, like, I started kind of feeling like, and I remember before, like, I remember having this, like, conversation with myself, and by then I stopped going to therapy because I felt like, I figured this out now. My hubris got the best of me. And I felt like, I remember just thinking, like, I never really tried to be in a relationship. Like, I always had one, I think it was a line from, I forget the name of movie John Cusack. But he always said he always had 1 foot in and 1 foot out, of every relationship. And I kind of realized that I had been living that way. And I remember thinking, maybe and I was like, well, I'm the problem. So what I'm going to do with the next person I date, I'm going to put all my chips in the center of the table, and I'm going to try my hardest, and I'm going to ask for the bare minimum, like just table scraps, crumbs.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second, and I apologize for everyone, but the movie nerd got the best of me. High Fidelity.
Thank you. God, I could not think of it. I was thinking, like, Grosse Pointe Blank. I was saying, like, that's not it,
I'm sorry. I was dying to say it right there. I'm a movie nerd.
You could have interrupted me. I love that movie, but it's been years since I've seen it. But yeah, so anyway, what was I? Oh, yeah, so I pushed – When I realized all this stuff, I realized, like, wow, like, I thought if I just asked for those crumbs, I thought there would be no way I couldn't get it. Like,
you set your bar. You set your bar really low.
Right.
Yes.
And I figured that's probably what I need to do, because I always, never really let anybody in. So I thought, I'm just going to try it this time, and maybe I'll get this love that I've been avoiding my whole life at this point. So, and that was I met my ex off of Tinder, and I remember I was actually in the process of being like, the dates I had gone on and the people I would talk to, like, nothing was clicking. So I was actually almost at the point where I was like, I'm just going to turn this off, and I'm not going to date for a while because this is just not working. And I saw her, and as anybody knows, like, she super liked me. And I thought, wow, this girl's pretty. She has a great smile and great eyes and all that stuff. And I was like, wow, this is nice. And, we kind of just exchanged messages, very nice, like, just calm. I realized she lived about an hour away from me, and so there was a little bit of distance. So I didn't feel the pressure or the rush to meet her right away, you know. So we, after probably a day or two, we exchanged numbers and we talked on the phone. And she had this, like, you know, great voice, and she has a really loud, like, kind of. I really loved it. It was a very loud. I thought the laugh was a very infectious laugh. And it was very powerful, and she was very confident, and I was not confident. So this was like, wow, this is nice. Like I remember thinking, like, you know, wow, we really balanced each other out, like kind of yin and yang stuff. And I kind of started feeling like, wow, this was kind of nice, you know. And you know, like we talked for almost 2 weeks, and it was about everything: music, movies, you know, faith, spirituality, all that kind of stuff, you know. And so we finally agreed to meet, and it was about a month into talking. I'd say about 3 weeks to a month. We met in a mall, and it was really nice. Like, you know, she was in the process of getting a divorce, and it was just really talking. I didn't know how she would gauge me, and it was nice. It was really just nice, but I always kind of gave her avenues to leave. Like, I'd walk, you know, I took her out to lunch, and then, you know, we'd walk around, and I kept on, like, kind of being like, letting her know, like, it's okay. I was almost like expecting the rejection in a way, and it never came, but I still felt really off by it. And then, you know, we left, and I gave her a hug, and, you know, I basically drove away, and I remember thinking, like, I screwed that up, or I messed something up. And she texted me, she goes, it was a really nice meeting you, and I'd really love to do it again. And I was like, holy crap, like, that actually worked. And then we just kind of started dating, and then it really just kicked off. The next time we met, it was like we all said, let's be exclusive with after the second date. And a month in, and we were pretty hot and heavy, and it really started progressing there. And then, like, Valentine's Day hit, and, you know, she gave me probably still the best gift I've ever gotten. And it was this jar, and it was on the top of it said, you are undeniably. And it was inside this glass jar was all these pieces of paper of all these words she thought I was. You know, like, you know, funny, handsome, intelligent, all these things. And I just remember just being so blown away by this. Like, I had never experienced anybody doing that for me, like, being that thoughtful, because I'd always been, you know, the type that I did that stuff. And to have it done to me was just, I was floored, you know. And I remember I was thinking, this beautiful girl likes me. Like, this is unreal, you know. And everything felt right. And I had ignored a lot of the flags about her, and because I just wanted to see, you know, the good things. But, you know, she had a really rough life, and just a lot of bad choices by her, but family life was awful. Just abusive relationships. And I remember thinking, like, I'm not going to do that. You know, almost like I'm going to protect her, I'm going to save her, you know, from this stuff. And I just felt like, you know, this person actually really likes me, and I like her. This is what this feels like, you know. I remember just feeling that way. Like, I cannot believe that this feels this way.
So for you, she's showing interest in you that you've never felt or experienced before.
Never.
You have a deep empathy for how she grew up?
Yeah, huge. I mean, you know, it was definitely wrong side of the track stuff, but, you know, even though, you know, I have struggles with religion, especially Christianity, from stuff from my past, she would go to church every week. She collected Bibles, and, you know, I was thinking, like, wow, okay, well, this person really turned it around. Like, you know, this is someone who kind of got through the bullshit of life and like came out ahead, like realized it, and made some corrections. And I felt like I was doing that. So I felt even more attached to, this person who transformed. I almost took inspiration from it,
and not just transformed, I guess in your mind, someone who goes to church, or at least in the way that she's gotten her life back together, is a trustworthy individual is that what you're saying to yourself?
Yeah. Like she would tell me stuff because I kind of felt like, I really just respected her. I respected the fact that she did turn around, and that made me actually, I've always been kind of suspicious, I guess. And it's not because of anybody else. It was just kind of where I'd come from, and what I dealt with. I trusted her. I felt like, wow, this is, she always told me like, how much she hated being cheated on, and so I would never do that to anybody. And I just was like, okay. And like, it's like, I felt like, wow, this person really has a lot of high moral caliber. And from not having one. So it's like, it was like, from what she did in her life, where it was, just a lot of just really self-destructive behavior that she had. I felt like, she turned it around when she found God or whatever, and was really just rectifying herself. And I thought, wow, and I kind of felt like I was doing that, the reclamation project, I had this amazing woman in my life, and he would tell me stuff like, she was sitting there, she goes, yeah, I was telling my mom, she said, I could spend the rest of my life with you, in regards to me, and be really happy. And I remember like, wow, like this is incredible. Like this is real. Like all that stuff I remember, seeing from couples and movies and all that kind of stuff. I felt like, wow, this is really my life. Like I actually have this. This is phenomenal.
So at this point, trust has been fully built, most likely right here, I would assume, after the mom says that. Do you have her on a pedestal at this point?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Do you know that you have her on a pedestal here, or you won't even come to that realization until later down the road?
I think, in the back of my head, I realized it, but I just felt at this point, I think it was a little, I felt like I didn't deserve her in a way. And it was kind of a combination of a few emotions, right? It was a little bit of, I kind of realized I was doing this. I knew I probably shouldn't do it, but I figured, no, she's okay. Like she fixed herself, even though there was a lot of red flags that were flaring. There was still that, like, I just constantly just gave her the benefit of the doubt because I felt like she was this person. So yeah, it's kind of like, and I think anybody who's gone through this stuff, it's like, it's bad kind of, but you don't realize how bad it is. It's like you have justified and have in a way warped this person to be something they're not, because you need them to be this person. For my reason was I needed that strong woman in my life, which I felt I needed at the time, because I had lost that. And it's a little Oedipus, and I get that, and I see that now, but I didn't really understand why I was, so, just heterophilic. This person was fun. She was a lot of fun. It
sounded to me like in your mind, you think you're the one who is, I guess, I use the term emotional vampire, the one who's using her energy to your benefit, while you're not realizing that eventually we'll find out that this person is going to be really sucking your energy until they're going to eventually discard you eventually, like in your story.
Oh yeah.
But in the first place, you thought you were the one doing it to her. Is that in your mind?
In a good way. Like I took her energy, and it kind of like, because I was really in a bad funk. And then when I met her, it was like, I felt like I had gotten this like jolt.
Well, you thought the energy was going to work in a circle where you would get something from that and she would get it from you, and it would work in a circle, and you'd have this momentum where you were building each other going forward.
Exactly. The cup runneth over, so to speak.
Yes.
I very felt it was a mutual thing. And it kind of caused me to, definitely, like I said, it definitely caused me to ignore some big flags, but I just kind of, like I said, I kind of just gave her the benefit of the doubt, because I've, in a way, I was getting all this great energy from it. And I was thinking, I remember thinking, like, everybody's got flaws, like, who am I to judge? It was definitely that kind of benefit of the doubt energy. But it was definitely, like, I took her on a trip, and it was like a couple hour trip, but like, we got a little hotel, and I was on a lake, and it was really nice. And, it was just like, I remember just waking up next to her, and we were looking at the sunrise, and I was like, wow, I remember just looking at her and being like, and I said to her, I was like, I could spend the rest of my life doing this, and I just was so, I was so in love. Just, I had never felt that before. And, I mean, like, she surprised me on my birthday. I remember, like, she was waiting for me in my room, and it was like during the middle of the day, that kind of thing. And she was wearing an outfit. And it was just like I was so floored that someone would do that, like, completely surprise me. And that's like, surprises are always like what gets me, because I don't ever expect it, because I'm usually the one that's giving, I'm the giver. So whenever I receive, especially when I'm not expecting it, it always blows me away. And she was really good about that, at least in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And then
but we definitely, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, and then the after that, the devaluation began.
It started a little bit after that. I started to kind of realize, even through this love phase, that, like, she wasn't, like, she swore like a sailor, swore more than anybody I've ever been around. And I don't have the cleanest mouth in the world, but I mean, she put me to shame. And, and I, not just like normal with the 4-letter words. I mean, there was a lot of the racial words, N-bombs, F-bombs, anything that she could think of. She called somebody it just was like, I remember just being very much like, and she never, it was not like, it was like she would quote, like, almost like in like a rap way, and she was white, so it was like, kind of like, I don't know why you're saying this all the time, I remember just being like, so there was a lot of, like, I remember thinking, like, why isn't, like, something's not matching up here, because, she would want to go, like, drink a shit ton and then go to church the next day. And, like, we were in our mid-30s. I mean, she's older than I am. So I remember I was thinking, like, why is this happening? Like, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I kind of just would, like, I remember thinking, well, it's my problem. You know what I mean? Like, it's my problem because she's okay with this and I'm not. So I kind of just, took it on my own. But about a month after my birthday, I had planned another trip for her, where I took her to a city, and it was like it was a longer trip. So it was like a longer weekend. I got this really, really nice hotel room. I surprised her. She had no idea where we were going. So I was really proud of that. I spent like a couple weeks planning this trip out for us. And, I took her I had her like, I said, I wore a suit. I said, dress to the nines. We're going to go out, hit the town, and I remember, I took her to a really nice Italian restaurant and went to a jazz club. It was really, really cool, and, we were there till like almost midnight at this point. And, I normally go to bed like at 9. So it's like, I'm already kind of tired, but I'd been drinking a little bit, and we Ubered back to the hotel, but she was like, I want to go dance. And at this point I was pretty drunk and pretty tired. And then she was like, well, let's go to a dance bar. So we went to this like, techno bar. And, by then I started sobering up, my head started pounding. And, She was trying to dance on me, and she looked at me. She goes, "You look miserable." And I said, "Well, this music isn't helping my headache." And she, even under the dance music, you know, she just scoffed and stormed out. I was like, ah, shit. You know, so like I'm chasing after her, and no lie, she's like a good 30 feet ahead of me, right? Like, and I cannot, like, I'm trying to keep up with her. I'm calling out to her, and she's just not turning around. And finally, I got up to her, and I grabbed her shoulder. I'm like, "What's going on?" And she looked at me, and she goes, "You're the most boring person I've ever dated." And I just, like, stood back, and she just kept on walking. And I was just, like, so blown away by this, you know, because I remember thinking, like, I had planned this whole trip. Like, how is this boring? You know, I remember just being, like, so hurt by that. And we got back to the hotel room, and, like, of course, it's like, you know, I'm apologizing the whole way up, and she's so fucking mad at me, like, just, like, fuming, arms crossed, like, trying, like, every time I would touch her, she would move away from me, kind of thing, you know. And I'm going, like, what the hell's going on, you know? And we got back to the room, and I'm laying down, and I'm not feeling good, and she's like, "I'm not taking care of you." And she stood at the edge of the bed, and she was just texting. And at this point, I had passed out. I was starting to pass out. I was like, I remember, and it's even now, I didn't remember that she was doing this. Like, I remember it later that she was texting. I thought she was just, like, you know, I don't know, on Facebook or something like that. She was always on social media. So, like, so I thought she was just on there, but I remember she was definitely talking to somebody now, I think back. And it kind of was, you know, I woke up the next morning before she did, and I walked around, and, you know, I finally came back up, and I said, "You know, this is my fault." I took the blame. I said, "You know, I'm feeling really insecure, so, you know, I'm going to start going to the gym. And, you know, it means I don't feel really good about myself, so I'm going to lose some weight." And she'd already been working out, and she'd lost at that point. I mean, she wasn't big, but she already lost like 10 pounds, 10, 15 pounds. And she was looking really good. And, you know, so I was like, I kind of felt like I don't want to lose this person, you know, so I kicked it into high gear. Like,
within this time, is she devaluing you in other ways, or are there other things kind of going on that you've been letting slide? The way she talks to you or anything like that?
Yeah. So basically, you know, in the process of talking, you know, in the beginning parts of it, you know, she did have, with this, you know, boisterous laugh and this confidence, she has a really dark sense of humor. And so at first it was kind of like funny, you know, you laugh at jokes you shouldn't laugh at, you know, stuff like that. But she was really cruel, like really, really cruel. And she would try to, like, take, you know, at first she would take digs at me. Like, you know, I remember, you know, I played, you know, bass in my band. And I remember her sending me a thing like, you know, "Oh, you play bass?" And it's like, you know, I'm pulling panties up, stuff like that. Like kind of like, you know, it's like almost like, you know, little subtle jabs. And I thought, okay, that's kind of funny. You know, I didn't really think nothing of it, but it, you know, it just kept on being very, she told me, like, you know, she would say stuff and then try to pass it off as a joke. Like, she would almost like that whole passive aggressive, like, be cruel, but then, "Oh, I'm just kidding with you." And then it was like, she remember her saying to me, like, you know, I have to handle you with kid gloves because you just can't take any jokes. Like, you don't have a sense of humor. You're not funny. And I'm a pretty jovial guy. And I remember just kind of feeling like, you know, I remember when she said, "I have to handle you with kid gloves because I can't handle her humor." I remember just being like, "Well, why are you being mean? Like, there's no point." Like, I'm thinking, like, you know, make fun of other people, like, okay, but, like, I'm not doing anything that's worth that, you know. But so she would always, like, I don't know. It would definitely be like very much like she would try to, like I would ask a question, like, or ask her something, and she'd be like, "What? You don't know anything about that?" She would be like, you haven't changed a tire. You're not a man, like that kind of stuff. And it was like, you're too. She called me one time. She was like, you're just kind of an elitist, aren't you? Like you're just, your hands are soft, so like you're not blue collar. And like I work an office job, so I'm thinking like I just always just felt like, I always kind of felt like I wasn't man enough for her.
Was she ever taking positives of yours and then turning them into negatives?
She would say stuff like, you're too nice. I got that a lot. You're too nice. You're too nice to people. Which with the religion thing, I'm just like scratching my head. Like she, like something where I have this personal mantra where I try to do like one nice thing for somebody every day. And she was very much like, that didn't really make a lot of sense to her. Like at first she was like that. I think she found that endearing, but like almost like she always told me, she's like, I was just waiting for you to turn to an asshole. Like all my niceness was fake, so that then she could be like, see, you're real. And then she was like, oh no, you're actually really nice. You're actually like a good person. You're a good man. I always held the door open for her and all this stuff, but it always felt like because I wasn't like, I didn't drive a pickup truck or I wasn't, working on cars. There was always this very much of, she would always kind of look down at me and be like, I don't know shit about cars, and she'd be like, yeah. And I remember her talking to like a friend of hers and be like, well, he doesn't know anything about cars. And then like to a car person, they would laugh together, and I would just kind of, even though they were older and it wasn't meant to be like mean, it was mean, like that kind of stuff. It was definitely a lot of like subtle, very subtle devaluing that I really just kind of brushed off, but it just made me feel like, well, I got to try harder then, like, okay, maybe I'm not this.
It is taking its toll on you. And
yeah, it was subtle,
but it's also making you off balance in the sense of, you don't know, is she being serious? Is she not being serious? You're kind of confused, I assume, by all of this. And it's kind of, it's creating a web for you that you're kind of falling into, of self-worth. Like, it's playing around with your self-worth and your self-esteem.
Right. And it was already low. And then, we got through Valentine's Day and I remember we went to I don't know what it was. Like we went to her neighbors had this outdoor party and like there was all like a country time thing. I don't know what the theme was. So she dressed in like an 1880s, dress with a bonnet and stuff like that. I forget what the hell it was about, but she just was like, so like completely not interested in me, like completely like, I'm not sorry. I haven't thought about this in a while. So it's kind of, I had that feeling kind of hitting me of just being with somebody who does not want to be around you. And I didn't know why. Like I'm thinking like, and I'm talking it out with my friends and I'm going like, am I doing something wrong here? I'm asking like I'm just asking anybody like, am I fucking up here? Like, what can I do to make this better? What can I do to fix this? What can I do? And everyone's like, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. And I'm like, well, I'm doing something wrong because she doesn't want anything to do with me. She's starting to pull away and I don't know, I got to fix this, cause like you said, like I'm feeling all this abandonment and rejection. And so after this like party, she lost it. Like I remember she lost her shit on me. Like I was sick and I told her like, hey, like I told her I didn't feel like coming down and seeing her because it was an hour drive between us. And I was like, it was supposed to be Friday night and my roommate at the time just got dumped by this girl and I was not feeling good. And I was laying down. I left work early. I told her I don't feel really good, so I'm gonna stay home. And he came home. And he was really upset, and he was like, "Hey, man, can you come talk to me? Like, I just need to talk this out." So I was like, all right. So like, my head was pounding, but he wanted to go to Twin Peaks. I don't know if you know what that is. It's kind of like Hooters, but they're wearing like plaid stuff. And I'm like, whatever. I didn't give a crap, right? But I'm just going there, and I'm just sitting there and just listening to him talk, and I'm not eating. I'm just drinking water, because I don't feel good. I'm just trying to be there for him. So like, we get home, and I call her, and I'm like, yeah, I just got back from Twin Peaks, and she lost it. She's like, I'm home alone on Friday night, and you're out at a bar having fun without me. Like, this is totally – I cannot believe you're doing this. I can't believe you would do that. And I'm like, look, I feel like crap. Like, you're lying to me. I'm like, no, I'm sick, but, like, he needed me there. And so I went. Like, I didn't want to go, but he needed me there. And she's like, I just can't do this relationship anymore. And at that point, I was like, you're probably right. Like, we probably just need – or this driving all the time is starting to wear us down. And at this point, I'm thinking, like, like at that time, I had started the process of buying a house for her, myself, and her kid. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna bridge this gap, right? Like, I'm gonna go full. I'm still gonna push the chips aside. So we found this really cute little house up in the woods. And I'm thinking this is perfect. It's got 2 rooms. He's got his own side. We've got ours. Like, it's got a big lawn and all this stuff. And I'm thinking this is great. So I was thinking, like, well, let's just take let's just, like, cool our jets a little bit, like, let's just, we can talk, but, let's just not, you don't have to see each other, just see each other whenever we can, and we'll make it work. And she was like, okay, that sounds good. I left feeling pretty good. I was like, maybe this is what we need. Maybe the break is what is healthy for us. And it's because, at that point I was getting pretty fed up myself. But I was still needing that closeness. So everything was going great. And, I had this friend, and I posted something on Instagram, and my friend of mine, she's an ex-model, and she's, 5'11", blonde, beautiful. Right. And she used to work with my mom and all this stuff. So, beautiful girl. And she happened to comment on something. And it was very, like, tongue-in-cheek. It wasn't like she was, flirty. It was just more of like, oh, hey, that's really funny. Ha-ha, hope you're doing okay, kind of thing. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm doing great. Hope you're doing well, too. Like, that kind of innocuous, right? And I remember she sent me this text of this, like, weird smiley face, right? And I remember being like, what the hell is that? I said, what is that? And she didn't reply. And then I got this email from her. And this email talks about it. She goes, well, you finally did it. I'm jealous. I see this girl, and it made me go crazy because you're going to give this girl the love that you were giving me. And, I don't understand. I feel so conflicted, and I love you so much, and I just don't want to lose you, and I think you're the most amazing man, and you're the sweetest thing I've ever met, and all this stuff. And I'm just reading this letter, and I'm like, because she can never say that. She has to write it out, because she can never, like, orate that she has deep feelings for somebody. She has to type it all out, because she just can't say it. And I remember reading this. I was, like, in Walmart or getting some groceries. I remember reading this email. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I thought we were just chilling, on a break. Like, I don't know where all this flood of emotion comes from. But, at that point, that was my confirmation, right? I got my reassurance. So I called her and I said, hey, everything's great. I don't know why but everything's fine. And, so that was the only real time that she was ever.
But in reality here,
genuine.
She is. Well, you say genuine, but in reality here, she was distancing herself from you, separating herself from you, and as soon as someone else showed interest in you, she didn't like that and wanted to kind of bring you back into the fold, and you fell for it in that sense.
Right. Because I didn't think anything was wrong. Because I thought we were just on a break, like a semi-break. Like, because we were still seeing each other. We were still having sex. Like, we were still dating. You know, we still said I love you. So I didn't really understand where this was coming from. I was really confused. Because I didn't think really anything had changed other than we're not seeing each other as often. But we still saw each other. I mean, like, nothing had really changed, which was why I was so confused. But I think about it now, and I think it was because she was already seeing somebody else. Like, she had already set sights on somebody else and was already but thought that she could keep me in, you know, the background, so to speak, and she could do this, and then this freaked her out because, God forbid, somebody else finds me attractive.
So you were being set up for you were at first a primary source of narcissistic supply, and eventually you were being put into the role of a secondary narcissistic supply, and she was moved on to someone else. And as soon as she noticed that you were pulling or not noticed, but like that someone showed interest in you, maybe in her mind what was kind of going on was, oh, there goes this piece of supply for me. I need to pull that person back in because I need to be entertained all the time when I want to be entertained.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what I figure out now. I think sometimes it's hard because I still love this person more than I loved anybody. So I still wanted to see the good in them. You know, I didn't see the train that was coming. I just figured I finally got my affirmation. At this point, she started going to the gym hardcore. She was going to the gym all the time. Hired a personal trainer, which she didn't really have the money for, but she found the money for this guy. I felt like I was still stagnant, and she was getting more and more. I felt like she was disgusted with me. That was the energy that she was giving me. And I got really needy. And, like, you know, like I'm the first person to admit, like, you know, obviously through this whole process, like, I'm not perfect. You know, like, I definitely didn't do a lot of things right in this relationship. I definitely wasn't perfect, but I did a lot of things with the best of intentions. And it started to kind of dawn on me, even though I was so in denial, that there was something so wrong with what was happening. Because my family and my friends could see it, right? And I remember she didn't come up for my niece's birthday, and, like, you know, I came back and my friends told me, like, my brother was really upset because he was mad at her because, like, my whole attitude was bad because I was worried about her, and he's like, she's treating him like crap. Like, look at him. And she was like, he's like, no one treats anybody like I do. Like, he was like, he's such a good guy. Why is she doing this to him? And all my friends were like, I don't know. And I found all of this out months later, but it was that kind of, no one really understood what was going on. Even my friends that were around, it was always like, they would joke because they would be like, you know, she'd be like, you should buy me a jet ski, you know, and then she was like, we should do acid. And I'm more like, what the hell's going on? Like, I'm still like all, you know, but I'm thinking, you know, once I buy this house, I'm still like, that's like, you know, my carrot at the end of the stick. Like, I buy that house, we live together, everything's going to be fine. I just got to get to that house. And it was in June, you know, so I just got to make it to get to that house, you know? And so we, you know, I buy the house, move in, she comes up, we have a nice weekend away, you know, there's a town that's not that far, so we went there for like a weekend trip, just had really nice food, all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, she told me, she was like, her dream car is an Audi. Like, she's just obsessed with Audi. She had one, and then, like, she got into a wreck, and it ruined it. So she was driving this piece of crap where she really wants Audi. So she found this Audi in Texas, which is like a 9-hour drive. And she's like, I'm going to go get it. And it was like, mind you, she made very little money. But she was like, she could barely afford, she had just enough money to cover all of her bills and have a little bit left over. And so all of a sudden she was like, I want this Audi, and I've got the payment set up, and it's going to be $300 a month and all this stuff. And I was like, well, hey, if that's going to make you happy, knock yourself out, So at this point, she got this car, and she was so happy and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, well, I made her happy. Like, at this point, like, I had, she was struggling paying some bills, so I paid for some of her small bills, like nothing big, but I was giving her, I paid for some of her groceries. I insisted on buying her groceries. I was doing like little things here and there to kind of help her save up some money. And so at this point, she had this, her Facebook picture was her wearing these, it was a side picture, kind of a distance picture, but like she had her ass sticking out, and she's wearing these tight blue pants and her tongue sticking out. So her ass is out and tongue is out, right? And that's her Facebook picture. And she was like, and she was telling me, it's like, I cannot stand how many guys are hitting me up. I'm getting messages all day from guys, and it's so annoying. And I remember thinking, like, well, why telling her, like, well, why don't you just change, since we just got back from this little trip, we took a really good picture together, why don't you change your Facebook picture to that? And that would probably discourage them. She never really answered that. But I got on there. I remember I was at work, and it was late in the day, and I got on there just to see if she did change it. Of course she didn't. And I look at her Facebook profile, and she writes this huge, long message about how much she's gone through in her life, from every little struggle she's had and all the bad stuff that she had. And now that she's, got this car, and she says, I owe it all to my amazing family and Jesus. Because I gave my life to Jesus, I was able to reap the benefits of having a better life. And she started quoting the Bible. And I got to the end of it, and she didn't mention me once. And at this point, we've been together for a year and a half. And my face, all the blood drained from my face. And I just got up, and I was like, I only had like an hour left of work, I think. It was late in the day, and I just walked out of my car, and I started driving home, and I couldn't even make it home. I pulled over in a gas station, and I just started crying. Because I was so, like, I tried so hard to make this work. I did everything. I felt like I was doing everything in my power. And she has this one thing where she could just say, I had this amazing man in my life, and he's always been supportive and loving. And it was like nothing. I was so hurt. I just could not stop crying, because I just felt like there's nothing, I'm not good enough. There's nothing that I'm ever going to do that's ever going to be good enough for this person. And this person I loved so much, and it just could not understand why. Like, how, like, I was like, what else do I have to, I remember feeling that way. I was so defeated. And at that point, and then I got angry. And it was the 4th of July, and, I started mocking her faith. And, like, I was so angry at her. I was just a complete asshole, like, just complete asshole. And at that point, I didn't care. And she was really pissed off, and she hung up with me. And then I remember I texted her in the morning, and I said, hey, I'm sorry for acting that way, because I was still like, well, I got that out of my system kind of thing. And then she didn't reply for like 4 hours. And she said, I don't think I can come back from this. And I was like, yeah, I kind of figured. So I called her, and I said, and she was very cold, but she was like, I'm like, so I guess you probably want to end this. And she's like, yeah. And I said, well, come up and get your stuff. And so she drove up the next day and walked in. I gave her a hug. She handed me a letter, and the letter would basically just read how much of an asshole I am. And that's why she's breaking up with me. And I read parts of it, and I remember just being like, what the fuck ever? You know, I mean, at this point, I was so done with her shit, you know, and then she, like, you know, I remember, like, you know, we at that point, we were planning a trip to go to Vegas. It was my roommate's 30th birthday. And she was like, I'll go to Vegas with you still, and we can have sex like that. And I was just kind of like, looked at her, and I was like, you know, I was trying to, at that point, I was like, yeah, I was so like, I don't know, it was so like a weird feeling. It was kind of like relief, but also kind of like dumbfounded that this was like, wasn't registering that this was over almost. So, like, we had sex one more time because at this point, I don't know, I felt like that would be the closure.
So you didn't think it was weird that she just gave you a letter telling you what big of an asshole you are, and then she wants to go to Las Vegas with you?
Oh, yeah, but it wasn't at that moment. I don't, to be honest, like, I don't really, it was kind of a weird, dumb feeling. It was all kind of like a blur, you know, because I think I was just so kind of like pissed off, but hurt. And like, I felt like 5 different emotions, and I was kind of rolling through all of them at the same time, you know. It was kind of weird, but I mean, even at that moment, I'm like, you're not going to fucking Vegas with me, because I knew exactly what she would do. Like, I saw this coming a mile away. I knew that if I took her to Vegas, I'm still in love with her. She would go bang somebody else and get mad at me and tell me, you know, well, we're not dating, so I can do whatever the hell I feel like. You know, that was her attitude, you know. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this crap. And so, you know, at that point, and then, like, she walked out, she dropped me home, I gave her a hug, and then when she left, I called my roommate, and I literally took all the gifts that she gave me, I threw them all out. She drew me a picture, a self-portrait, and she's a really good artist. She drew me a picture, I threw it away. I threw away that nice little jar of things. So I'm like, this means nothing. Like, I knew it. And I started crying because, like, I didn't want to throw this away. But at the same time, I was so angry because I was just so fed up with her. You know, like, it got to a point, like, the first day or two, I was almost, like, relieved. And because, like, I immediately blocked her on social media. You know, and I got off my accounts. You know, I uninstalled Instagram. I deactivated my Facebook. You know, I got off of all that crap. And because I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. You know, because I'm not going to see her gallivanting with some other guy, because it would crush me. And she's the type of person that would post the pictures to rub it in my face. Like, I knew that she was that type of person, but I still loved her. And
so you still had her on some sort of pedestal here, even though it was officially over.
Yeah.
Does she ever try to Hoover you back?
When she would try to text me, it was always like, you know, on a Tuesday at like 11, right? It was never on the weekends. It was always during the middle of the week, during a time when there's no attention given to her. That's when she would talk to me. And I knew all of this. I knew what she was doing, but yet I had this person so far up on a pedestal that I could not see. And, like, I just started rationalizing everything. I said, you know, I made excuses for everything she did. Like, you know, I'm the stick in the mud. I'm the one that held her back. She just got out of a divorce. You know, obviously, you know, she wanted to go experience life, and I was holding her back because I'm not really for that, and it's my fault. And so, like, I had put her up on this pedestal that I just excused everything she did. I justified every action she did, and I just said it was because of me, you know. And so I spent all this time, like, ruminating over this, and it just was awful. I was in such an awful place, and nothing really made it better. You know, and then I started to really go into therapy, and, you know, I started to dive into, you know, red pill Stoic philosophy, understanding, narcissism, understanding, all this, I kind of covered the gamut. I just tried to find reasoning, which sometimes made it worse because it made me feel it's awful some of the stuff these mansphere blogs do, but they basically just tell you how much of a pathetic loser you are. And that's why you attracted, this type of person, because you feel like you deserve it, which made me feel even worse about myself. So it was
So did you fall into a deep depression?
Oh, it was terrible. Yeah. I mean, I was just, showing up to work. I was just, there. I would get my job done, and it would just be, it was like a goal for me to make it through the day or make it through the weekend without blowing my brains out. It was that kind of darkness. It was just I felt so awful.
So do you feel that a big part of this relationship and why you fell so hard, partly with the stuff that you came in with, but then partly because you didn't feel, in the whole scheme of things, respected in any way?
At first I thought she did. And I think, part of, the hardest thing for me was thinking she was something she wasn't. I thought she respected me, so therefore it's I realized that what she was doing, who she is. And it's I didn't realize that at the time because I just was kind of naive. I really believe this is how love is. You just love somebody unconditionally. This is the way this is. Part of that is that they got bad parts of them. I felt like she did. And I think that, I don't know if she ever did, but I think she did at one point.
So now
that's
you're
kind of what it comes out.
So now that you're in the aftermath of everything, what has been going? How have you been able to move on?
Well, I held on for a year and a half. Part of me always hoped that she would come back. Would wake up, I would get that. I'd pray every day that she would just text me and say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake." But I spent a lot of time trying to find myself. And, I really kind of became a shut-in. I'm always been introverted. I've always been I'd rather be alone. And I think I really just honed in on that. And I worked on just, working on different things of kind of figuring out why this happened. And so I spent a lot of time really dealing with my abandonment issues and realizing that I had these issues, especially dealing with the death of, someone as amazing as my mom. And really understanding some of the stuff that I was feeling was this residual loyalty to some of the feelings my mom had, because my mom had a very troubled life too. And I felt part of what I was feeling was trying to save my mom through this person. So a lot of it was kind of really understanding the emotions I was feeling and realizing that these emotions that I was feeling, the reason why I attracted this person, and not in a bad way, but realized it was a lot of it because this person was a mirror for me in a lot of ways. This person was for whatever reason was able to mirror back the feelings, both good and bad, that I had about myself, and the ability that I had and the pain that I was carrying. It really kind of showed me oh, okay, so I allowed myself to be treated this way because I didn't feel like I deserved any better. And and understanding that that, and part of it too was forgiving myself. That was the hardest thing, that I felt so duped. I felt so stupid and ashamed Like, I was so embarrassed that this person, I loved this person who, like, did all these things and was this awful person, and I knew that on an intellectual level, but I had realized that I had projected all this stuff onto her, and that's not her job. Like, and I realized that, you know, it's not anybody's job to make me happy. It's my job to make me happy. And that was like, I really dove into learning to love myself, because I realized I had such a low opinion of myself. And I still struggle with it even today. There are definite, I mean, I'm battling some stuff right now, some demons, but it's not nearly the level of where it was a year ago, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when this all kind of blew up. So I kind of measure myself. I'm able to be, I'm very self-aware. That's probably one of my best qualities, to be perfectly honest. I'm very aware of how I feel. I'm very understanding of how things feel. So I'm able to really understand, okay, if I'm feeling this way, if I'm having this emotional reaction, okay, what is this? Why is this triggering me? Oh, because I feel abandoned, because this makes me feel insecure, because I'm actually really scared. Oh, okay, so because I feel scared, I'm not going to allow this. I'm not going to react to this person's emotional reaction, especially with, I have a great girlfriend now, and when she reacts to stuff, sometimes, like, I don't get triggered because I understand that my emotions have nothing to do with her. So I just let her kind of be that, and I kind of give her space to feel what she feels, because if she's having an emotional reaction, I say it's okay. Like, I give her a loving space to feel this emotion, because I understand it's got nothing to do with me. And that's what you start to kind of realize, is that, you know, part of it is, like, you stop being a victim. You stop being a victim of your emotions and letting your emotions rule, because it's like, I dove a lot into Carl Jung and understanding your subconscious. Like, I dove into all this philosophy and understanding, like, how your subconscious runs you. And it definitely, and I found that's really true for me. And I was like, wow, it was like this big revelation about how I've been ruled by my emotions. And I kind of just got to understand where my emotions come from and heal. And no lie, as awful as this experience was and how traumatic it was the most important relationship I ever had with anybody. It changed me profoundly, and to a point that I don't even recognize myself. Like, I'm just such a different person from where I was when I got into that relationship. Even whenever I ended it, it's like night and day. Like, I don't even recognize that part of me. I see pictures of me from that time, and it's like, man, I don't even know that guy. And because I'm so much more at peace and calm and self-assured that I never was. I was like the polar opposite of this only a few years ago. And if I did not go through this experience, I don't think I ever would have woken up to this. I never would have realized the patterns I was playing over and over again. I don't think I ever would have woken up. I would have just continued on this path, and I would have attracted another narcissist who could have been even worse than this person, you know? And I realized that. I was like, wow. And I really just said, I can't be with anybody that's, and I just see I see the flags a mile away now, and I'm just very aware of it, and I'm aware of them in myself as well. And I'm not going to point the finger, because even with her, like, I'm not going to point the finger at her. This wasn't all on her. A lot of it was me too, and the difference is now I can understand what was her and what was me. And that's been the biggest difference too, is not putting it all on me, but understanding that some of the stuff was actually hers, which was a big revelation too, because I grew up thinking everything was my fault. Like, when I felt abandoned, it was because there was something about me that nobody wanted to be around. So by healing that, it was like, wow, like, it was just like, I would just have these epiphanies that were just mind-blowing to me, how I was on this pattern. And, it's kind of how I was able to pull myself out of it. And, I'm not perfect. Like I said, I have moments, and I'm going through some stuff even now, dealing with some pain, some emotional strife, but I'm able to deal with it in a lot healthier manner than I've ever been. And I just measure myself constantly to see how I'm doing. And, I do whatever, if I have measures I need to do, I make sure that I give myself enough self-love and be around really good people that love me, and I just get that reinforcement, and it makes all the difference.
And before we end off our show, do you have any last words for everyone out there?
Yeah, I really think that the one thing I want everybody to know is that it's not your fault. Like this is something, why you attracted this person or any of that has little to do with who you are right now, but really understanding that sometimes this is way deeper than you think it is. And understand that you have the power to change this and make this better. And it's okay to be a victim. It's okay to be in pain. But it's important to make sure that you forgive yourself and let yourself off the hook and love yourself, because it isn't anybody else's job to, because people can love you or they can hate you, but it's got nothing to do with you. It's all about how people feel about themselves. So once you understand that, it is the biggest liberation, because then you can just accept people for who they are and not who you want them to be.
Well, Darrin, thank you for being on our show and sharing your story with me and the audience today. It's been an honor. So I wish you nothing but the best going forward, and I'll probably check up on you in the near future. So once again, thank you for being on the show, and for everyone out there listening, have a good night.